Hey coaches, hey practitioners, Trisha Sheehan here from Health Coaching Community and News. I'm so excited about today's guest speaker. Is truly my favorite person to listen to. There's always so many awesome pearls and really game-changing ideas when I listen to Tracy. And so when she does her talks, I 100% tune in and sometimes have to go back and listen to it twice to get it all down. So Tracy, just so honored to have you with us today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here in Health Coaching Community and News, and excited to talk to you today about true root cause of disease.
Indeed. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. And as you well know, but I really want to say a word to your audience here, how grateful I am for people who are doing this work. Tricia and I have spoken many times over the years about our shared belief that health coaches are and will continue to exponentially transform healthcare because you are in the sweet spot, right? You are in the pivot point for helping people to change their lives, right? To make different daily choices. And that's everything around recovering from disease or preventing it. So thank you for doing this work. I'm so grateful.
Awesome. Yeah, we have so many inspired coaches and nurses and even doctors in the group. And I'm just excited when we could all come together to learn and grow and ask the good questions and push the entire industry forward. And I'm grateful to be part of an industry that believes in the rising tide lifts all boats, and that we can all help each other and do talks like these and ask each other questions and share experiences. And there's more of us that are needed than actually are out practicing. So just
Amen.
thrilled about the whole movement. And of course, a lot of that was speared by you and what you're doing at the school. So I'm excited for everybody to learn more about your approach.
Awesome. Great. All right. So shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So Tricia asked me to talk today about true root causes of dis-ease. And one of the things I want to talk a little bit about today is the difference between diagnosable disease that is entrenched and causing suffering or disability or dysfunction, a dramatic reduction of quality of life. And one of the biggest challenges that we have in managed healthcare today is that we have agreed definitions for diagnoses, but we're really waiting for something to become chronic enough and severe enough to be diagnosable. And I really believe that one of the most important changes that we are making collectively as a community in terms of transforming the outcomes of healthcare is engaging earlier, ideally early for prevention, but at a minimum, we have the opportunity to engage when there is dis-ease in the body, right? Even that word feels lighter, as though something is just awry, off, out of balance. But if we can engage in supporting the people in our practices when what they're struggling with is hopefully way in advance of being diagnosable, but the symptoms that they're experiencing, the reduced quality of life, their intuition that things just aren't right, we have an opportunity to engage, to help them to find the true root causes that are at play in their unique life system so that they can make changes, make sustainable changes, and reverse those dynamics, those imbalances, that dysfunction, so that things never become severe enough to be diagnosable. I think this is the component of the entire healthcare pie, if you will, that is most missing today. And again, I want to thank all of you for being involved in a more progressive, lifestyle mediated aspect of healthcare, regardless of your particular modality. But one of the things we're passionate about teaching practitioners at the School of Applied Functional Medicine is about the importance of certainly honoring where people are today, what they're struggling with. If they are suffering, they need relief and rapid relief in an arena that is important to them, that is causing some significant reduction in quality of life, is important because rapid relief is key for galvanizing, first of all, their belief in your skills as a practitioner. in terms of an engagement with a client or patient, their enthusiasm, their hopefulness, their openness is perhaps strongest right at the beginning of your program. And we have a limited period of time in order to help to partner with them in order to achieve some significant improvement so that they become quite galvanized in their belief, their trust in you. But the way more important aspect is galvanizing their own belief in their ability to get better, in their ability to heal, in the power of day over day choices for changing their net life experience. But when we look at what is actually at play upstream from the downstream issues and symptoms and dysfunction that people are experiencing, we teach practitioners in order to understand what are some of the most common patterns of interconnectedness, of imbalance and blockage or dysregulation in the body that can create some of the most common disease dynamics that we experience today. And this includes things like insulin resistance, hypothyroid function, immune hypervigilance like asthma and allergy, histamine intolerance, estrogen dominance. These types of interconnected across traditional systems in the body, but interconnected dysfunction that precipitates as some type of symptoms. We teach practitioners to really understand these most common patterns of interconnectedness in disease dynamics. But what I think is an even more powerful concept is even going upstream from the insulin resistance, upstream from the hypothyroid function, right? Even further upstream, what are the actual true root causes of those imbalances and disease dynamics that eventually show symptoms that eventually become severe enough to be diagnosable? And I think we can all understand the truth that upstream from all of these more complex and complicated physiological and biochemical imbalances are lifestyle choices. And in particular, we can summarize in 3 buckets the things that are most often at play. We call them crap food, toxins, and stress. Now, this is a concept that is critical for all of our patients and clients to understand, because we know that so many people who are suffering, and they may actually have a long-standing loss of quality of life and suffering, or they may have one or more official diagnoses. But so often the people we serve can feel disempowered, as though what they're suffering from is not something they can affect. That it's just their genes, right? It's just a given that they're going to catch what runs in their family, or somehow their body seems to be weak or incapable of supporting them or not reliable. And this negative belief system, I believe, can create a real nocebo effect in terms of people becoming disillusioned and almost resigned to having a progressive worsening of disease in their body. But when we educate and inspire and empower people to know that crap food, toxins, and stress are things that are within their control, and then you can teach them how specifically, not in a hand-waving general type of way, but in a real specific way, how does crap food, meaning in particular calorie rich, chemical rich, but nutrient poor food, how does that actually directly create or contribute to things like hypothyroid function or histamine intolerance? My clinical experience is that when people get educated and they actually understand, like, okay, I get that. Like, I could actually explain it to someone else. When they really understand and they get it, they become galvanized with a wave of understanding and empowerment that they can progressively take back ownership over their health and make a difference. And so while there are so many targeted interventions through the functional medicine lens that absolutely you can learn to be expert at in addressing insulin resistance or hypothyroid function or immune hypervigilance, for example. Upstream from that Crap food, toxins, and stress are the key contributors to our modern epidemics of disease. And any and all modalities can be involved in partnering and participating with clients and patients in order to change those lifestyle choices. I think it's actually one of the biggest challenges. So much of functional medicine today, it's such an exciting industry. It's growing rapidly, but I believe functional medicine on many levels has a bit of a branding problem today. You probably heard this, or maybe you've experienced it yourself. It's expensive medicine, right? It's a modality of healthcare that involves lots of expensive labs and lots of supplements and an overload of direction. And I actually believe that while labs can be really helpful for practitioners who choose to use them in order to get a closer lens on what might be at play in a person's body physiologically, uh, fancy labs and supplements and all of these protocol type notions can actually be very distracting. And I think this is true for any modality because the most important aspect of helping someone to get well and stay well is partnering with them, teaming with them, supporting them to change the choices that they make on a day over day basis. It's just logical. We all know if you keep making the same old choices that you've been doing, it's really unrealistic and illogical to expect different outcomes. And so when some combination of crap food, toxins, and stress is at play, sure, there can be some drug or some supplement or some tweak or approach that can give people some relief. But none of that relief is going to be sustainable if people keep making the same choices day over day. And so we're very passionate about teaching people how to educate, inspire, and empower individuals to progressively make different choices so that those disease dynamics can actually be reversed, not just managed, not just band-aided, but actually reversed. They will naturally go away as a result of restoring functional balances in the body. And I want to talk about some of these particular dynamics because in particular, one of the truths that I think is a particularly powerful concept to teach your clients about is that often there is a fundamental disconnect between the choices that people are making on a day over day basis and the life experience that they want to have. And let me explain, because so often what patients and clients are wrestling with, even if it's quite severe and dysfunctional and entrenched, it is not actually evidence of anything wrong in their body. In fact, the body is working exactly as it was designed to function. But the common sociocultural norms that our clients experience today is very much about eating a lot of crap food, what's convenient, what can be microwaved, what's hyper palatable, lots of refined carbohydrates, lots of chemicals, grabbing things on the go, having really crappy eating hygiene, so poor digestion, poor absorption of nutrients, prioritizing going and doing and rushing and stressing, right? Lots of ruminating thoughts, lots of judging and challenging and never being satisfied, never really resting. Go, 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 do. Deprioritizing sleep, staying up late, watching lots of TV, sleeping minimal number of hours, seeing it as a badge of honor to get by with as few hours as possible. And this creates a lot of not only mental, emotional stress, but physiological stress in the body. So our immune system is suppressed, our digestion is suppressed, our detoxification is suppressed, our fertility is suppressed. And what we actually end up with is supporting a person who unknowingly making normal choices has ended up being stressed, toxic, not rested, usually having chronic simmering infectious dynamics like high viral load or a bacterial infection that the immune system can contain but not fully eradicate. And hypercaloric from a sufficiency viewpoint, but really malnourished. in spite of that. And so those same people who are making all of those choices on a day-over-day basis come to a practitioner looking to understand what they need to do in order to have great digestion, lose weight and be thin, have a flat stomach, have beautiful skin, wake up and bound out of bed in the morning, get pregnant at the drop of a hat, have perfect bowel movements, no aches and pains, high libido and awesome orgasms, and to just be relaxed and peaceful with their lives. We can do a major service for the people we serve by simply helping them to understand that the lifestyle choices that they are making are never going to co-occur with the lifestyle experience they want to have, because the life choices that they're making are telling their body to be in a sympathetic dominant nervous system mode, that their survival is not assured, that they're fighting and flighting and hiding. And the life experience they want to have is one of a more predominantly parasympathetic nervous system mode, which is about thriving. And the body allows us to do that when our survival is assured. And so we need to teach people that the nervous system in particular, but especially the nervous system in cahoots and teamwork with the immune system, is taking cues and clues about how it should respond from our world. And if we're making choices that tell the body that, oh my gosh, we're stressed out and nothing's assured, and we're not sleeping, and we're running and we're rushing and we're ruminating and we're malnourished, and we've got infectious threats and there's all these toxins, your nervous system is not going to be fooled. It has survived for millennia by knowing the truth about what we need in terms of protection for survival. And so when people are in a sympathetic nervous system mode, the body responds in a particular way with particular muscle contractions and hormone axes balances, right? Hormone interconnected hormone levels and glandular secretions and different types of neurotransmission. There's a whole orchestrated response to ensure that we survive that is not prioritizing any of the things that were on that list of the life experience people want to have. And until the body is assured of our survival, picking up cues and clues from our life, those parasympathetic priorities, the things that people want to have, are not going to happen naturally. They don't go together, because the body is, as a first priority, wanting to make sure that we survive. And then only when that survival is assured, then the body will go into what is actually intended to be our dominant state, which is a parasympathetic one. Instead of fighting, flighting, and hiding, it's about resting, digesting, healing, and making babies. A really critical concept to educate patients and clients about. There's no pill, there's no magic fix that will allow people to continue to make those sympathetic promoting normal, right? Unhealthy default reality choices, and then still with ease achieve all of those more parasympathetic responses they want to have. Critical thing you can teach your clients about. I want to talk about stress in particular, because when we talk about crap food, toxins, and stress being the elements that are truly upstream from disease dynamics in the various people we serve, of course, there's a unique set of puzzle pieces for a unique individual, right? We're all making different choices from amongst those three buckets. But I really think that stress is the most insidious one. And to expand on what I was just describing, we have to teach people that when they're stressed, there are so many natural functions in the body that are being suppressed on purpose, largely because the body knows from an evolutionary viewpoint that if we may not survive until tomorrow or the next day, what difference does it make how well we digest our food? What difference does it make whether we get pregnant or not? What difference does it make whether we detoxify well? None of those things matter. So we have to prioritize survival. But from the body's viewpoint, stress is not just work stress or relationship stress or pandemic fears, right? Which is certainly omnipresent in our client populations at this point. Those certainly are all very important. But I want to draw your attention to two categories that I think most practitioners don't spend as much time focusing on. The first of those is that the most prevalent component of our lives that can contribute to our mental emotional stress is actually not our jobs, it's not our spouses, it's not our family, it's not even the pandemic per se in terms of global events. It's our thoughts. It's our thoughts. So we think about things that can be toxic to us, right? Like, oh, we want to have clean organic foods, or we want to have clean water, or we want to have filtered air, right? We drink more water than we eat food, but we breathe more air than we drink water. But we're thinking thoughts constantly, every waking hour, right? There's a voice in our head, and some of those thoughts are chosen, and some of them are defaults that we just stumble our way into. But our thoughts is perhaps the biggest component of our environment that our nervous system is paying attention to and trying to decide whether our world is safe, whether our world is sure enough that we can afford to thrive. And drawing people's attention to the thoughts they choose to have. What do they choose to focus on? What's their mindset? What do they choose to ruminate on? And we all know, even when we're really quite mindful, the stuff we make up in our head is crazy. I'm sure you can all relate to catching yourself focusing on a tense relationship, and you're still replaying that stressful conversation from last year or 10 years ago, or you're making up stuff. You're making up a possible worsening. We're expecting the other shoe to fall. We're expecting bad things to happen. We're expecting to be let down, to be disappointed. And we're telling our nervous system that things aren't safe. I think one of the most important truths to teach clients about in this vein is you don't fake out your own nervous system about the status of your stress. You just don't. You can put on a happy face, a fakey face with your friends, with your family, maybe even with yourself, right? But you're not going to fake out your own physiology, right, about the status of your world. And it knows your truth. The body knows your truth in terms of your stress. And so having people pay attention to their thought patterns, helping people to adopt mindfulness practices like structured breathing, mindful breathing, or gratitude journaling, or yoga, things that can help to draw people's attention to their thought patterns and to disconnect from them as an observer. I love recommending gratitude journaling, by the way, for my own clients, because if people are really stressed and they've got that loudmouth voice in the head that won't shut up, meditation is often completely inaccessible for them early on in their journey to make healthier choices. They're just not able or perhaps unwilling to go there. And so we can do a great service by having a good, diverse toolbox of options to offer people. Gratitude journaling, where we spend just maybe 5 minutes a day, very first thing in the morning or last thing at night in bed before we turn off the light, writing down maybe just 3 things that we're very grateful for in that moment, maybe reflecting on the day that has passed, whether it's again at night or first thing in the morning. But the key is to have people journal enough and in a way that attaches some positive, uplifting emotion to what they're talking about. It's not a quick list of, oh, my family, my health, this coffee, right? That's not a very useful gratitude list, right? It's funny, but it's not going to help people's nervous system to shift. We want to capture things that provoke positive, affirming emotion. It's the ability to hone in on, for example, that half an hour I spent with my daughter yesterday, where we went outside and we prepared the pots for the plants that we're going to put in this weekend, and we played in the soil. And when we talked and we enjoyed the sunshine and we sang songs together, right? That's an emotional moment. It's an emotional anchored and empowered piece of gratitude. Gratitude journaling I've seen be really transformative for waking people up, sometimes about the disconnect between what they're grateful for when they have the impetus to journal, but all the other crap that they're spending the rest of their day thinking about. And this awareness, we can't change anything we're not aware of. And so this type of thing can be really transformative for people. The second component of stress that I want to highlight is physiological stress. Again, as far as the nervous system is concerned, stress is not just about mental, emotional, spiritual types of responses. It's also feeling threatened. And we can have an increase in physical stress um, as evidenced by inflammation, right? Inflammation is simply evidence of your immune system identifying something as stranger and danger, right? Something that's causing a problem that is a threat to our homeostasis as a human being. And so things like food sensitivities, things like ongoing exposure to toxic chemicals, especially that people might slather on their skin. Some of you have heard me say before that we should think of the skin as a big mouth. And truthfully, we shouldn't smear anything on our skin in the name of personal hygiene or beauty that we're not willing to eat. On many levels, we actually have less protection on our skin for what we slather there. It gets absorbed, less so, but gets absorbed right into systemic circulation versus what you swallow at least goes through some pretty dramatic immune surveillance, metabolism in the gut, and then immediately goes through first pass hepatic clearance, so the liver can have a hand in deciding what may not be safe to allow to be circulated. And so toxins are threatening to the body. But there are many dynamics that are everyday that we don't think about as presenting physical stress. Things like food sensitivities, things like having insufficient sleep. Having insufficient sleep naturally raises cortisol. And in fact, if you have chronic insomnia, you end up having dramatically higher endogenous cortisol, stress hormone levels, which has an impact on your immune function, on your digestive function, on your detoxification function. And so whether it's insomnia from ruminating thinking, or maybe from sleep apnea, or maybe having allergens in the room where you're sleeping, maybe there's unbeknownst to the person, maybe there's some mold in their bedrooms. Maybe there's lots of disruptions, right? A snoring spouse or a pet that's constantly getting up and off and on the bed. But things like poor sleep are not just annoying, they're key mechanisms of disease. And so we have to teach people that physiological root causes of stress can be just as palpable mental, emotional ones. And this is why for some people, they don't have any physical stress. They just have a massive amount of mental, emotional stress, very reactive and negative and ruminating about their life elements. Other people seem to be incredibly positive and at peace with their lives and have a positive outlook and positive expectations. But yet there's all sorts of physical and physiological stress that they need your help in order to understand so that they can begin to make different choices in order to let them go. But stress is a massive component. I could actually argue that even beyond crap food and its low nutrient value and maybe high chemical presentation, or even toxins themselves, which can impair the body in myriad different pathways, right? From causing our mitochondria in our cells to work less efficiently, to causing our glands like our thyroid and our adrenals to work suboptimally, damaging cell membranes, right? There's all sorts of mechanisms via which chemicals that are ubiquitous in our modern lifestyle can promote disease. I actually believe that stress is the largest component. And it's the one that the people we serve are actually more likely to tolerate and want to talk about, right? It's fascinating to me to sit, and you like me have probably experienced this in a cafe, maybe even in your own family at a family gathering. But people will sit and compare notes on just how stressful their lives are. It's almost like they're competing to see whose life sucks more, whose life is more challenging. You think that's stressful. This is what's going on with me. Oh, that's nothing. Or, yeah, that's bad, but wait till you hear what I had to go through. We have this strange and completely dysfunctional impetus for competing on stress levels, and I think it's a fascinating aspect of our cultural norms, not in all communities but in many of them, where we're looking for who maybe who deserves a brighter, shinier badge of honor, badge of um, martyrdom, right? For putting up with all of the things that life requires of them, or putting up with all the things that their family or their job or others require of them. And so we're competing about it. We joke about it, when really what we need to be doing is doing something about it and taking charge of our lives, and getting the support we need. In particular, the education, the inspiration, the empowerment, the accountability, such a critical component of coaching, the accountability to actually begin to make different choices so that our reality is not something that we can compete about, but it's enjoyable and pleasurable and health promoting. It's a really interesting pattern, and again, a powerful component of client education that we can embark on. I want to shift gears from that to talk a little bit more about physiological stress, right? And patterns of dis-ease in the body that, if allowed to progress and worsen with a continuous downward spiral, yes, they eventually become severe enough to be diagnosable. And one of those has very much to do with our microbiome. I think it's a powerful component of patient education to really understand that we have a planetary level population and diversity of microbes in our gut. And they collectively have hundreds of times. The latest estimate is more than 300 times as much genetic material as our human genome does. And our physiology isn't just responding to our genes, it's responding to their genes, right? The trillions of microbes are behaving, they're living, they're thriving, they're secreting all sorts of metabolic byproducts. Our immune system is being primed by them for better, like good tolerance and stability and strength, or for worse, like hypervigilance and dysregulation, like we find in allergy and asthma and other types of atopy or autoimmune disease. And so the microbiome is primarily in our guts, but we have microbes in pretty much on every surface of our body, inside and out, and in all sorts of different cavities in the body. And I've long joked that there's so many of them, and their effect on our physiology is so multifactorial and large that you could have a good debate about who's in charge, who's the host. Are we hosting them, or are they hosting us? But keeping our microbiome healthy and diverse and balanced is a really smart aggregate systemic component of our human physiology staying healthy. And this speaks to having good sustainable lifestyle choices that keep our immune system appropriately primed, our microbiome appropriately diverse and balanced, so that first of all, we can avoid antibiotics at all costs. Because, and other than to avoid death, avoid loss of a body part, right? Thankfully, we're increasingly entering an era of healthcare where antibiotics are less being doled out as an immediate first line standard of care for infectious possibilities. But we know that it can take the microbiome many months to recover in a substantial way to a good diverse balance. But we also know it never recovers to exactly what it was before. And we're decimating not only a potentially pathogenic species, but all of the commensal and facultative species that are actually beneficial to our gut and to our immune system in terms of keeping good immune regulation. But beyond antibiotics, we can teach the people in our practice about the role of things like pesticides, right? Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides on our food, and the importance of clean food. It's not just a matter of not bringing in more chemicals into the body, which is important, but also not about damaging our microbiome, because of course they're living creatures that are going to be affected by those chemicals. In a similar way, we know that artificial sweeteners, especially things like sucralose, which is a chlorinated sugar molecule. It's like taking a tiny hit of an antibiotic every time you use a packet of it, or a sweetened food product. And can we help people to understand the impact of some of these chemical additives? We call it a sweetener, it's still a chemical additive, and begin to make different choices, to wean off of those, to choose more natural sweeteners, and then over time actually to reduce utilization of them, because it allows our taste buds to recover. In my clinical experience, it takes between 2 or 3 months for people's taste buds to adjust from having or needing foods to be significantly sweetened in order for them to taste good, to be palatable. But when people withdraw from added sweeteners, they tend to be more drawn to natural whole foods because they taste great, because they can taste the incredible sweetness just in a plain baked sweet potato. Or they can taste the incredible sweetness in a bowl of lightly cooked fruit, maybe with a handful of crushed nuts on top of it, which is sweet and really feels like dessert. Or even the natural sweetness in other vegetables, like a red pepper, right? A sweet pepper, or a cabbage, or a carrot, right? Because we allow our taste buds to actually bounce back and to become more adjusted to the flavors and the spectrum of natural flavors in whole foods. We can also educate clients about other things that can get in the way of a good, healthy microbiome. One of them is ingesting a good diversity of plant foods, right? We think about bacteria living off of starches and fiber. In truth, our microbes can live off of a lot of things, right? And they, for example, enjoy feasting on maldigested protein. For your clients who have poor protein digestion, especially those who maybe have suboptimal levels of stomach acid, maybe because they are into their senior or elderly years, where this becomes part of the norm, which is still something you can help them to improve. But they could also be struggling with it because they have an overgrowth of a bacteria called H. pylori in their gut that is purposefully suppressing their stomach acid synthesis so that the bacteria can thrive, right? People who have hypothyroidism naturally have reduced digestive secretions. This is the number one reason why having long-standing hypothyroidism creates a higher risk of pretty much any other disease. Because when you're not optimally digesting and absorbing nutrition from your food, of course, you're predisposed for dysfunction in the liver, dysfunction in the brain, dysfunction in the immune system, dysfunction in the joints. But people can also have insufficient stomach acid on purpose because they're taking drugs like a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor. And they take these drugs because they have chronic acid reflux. And the proton pump inhibitor is not addressing the root cause of the acid reflux at all. In fact, it's probably exacerbating it behind the scenes. What it's doing is managing it. It's reducing the acidity of gastric juices so that they're not as pro-inflammatory or erosive to the vulnerable tissue in our lower esophagus. but you can help people to address the actual root causes of chronic acid reflux, so they don't need the drug, so they have more optimal levels of stomach acid, so that they thoroughly break down their proteins and make less debris available for microbes in the intestines to overgrow and cause a problem, right? This is what we call a chain of interconnectedness. And you can imagine when you can confidently and very capably teach your clients about this chain of interconnectedness, just from an educational viewpoint, they start to get on fire like, oh my God, I had no idea. Who knew this? How come I didn't know this? This causes this, causes this, causes this, causes this. So if I change this step by step, I can improve this. Oh my goodness. And they become galvanized by the education. They become inspired by the possibilities. And then with your help, with tools, when they let you know, this is something I want to work on, can you teach me things about this? Can you give me some ideas about resources to help me in this space? You can say, yes, I can. And you pull from your diverse, rich toolbox of functional medicine insights, so that they can begin to address these chains of interconnected dynamics of disease. But anytime we're maldigesting our foods, we're creating way too much fodder at the microbial buffet that supports their overgrowth. And that's not just an overgrowth of pathogens, right? Overt pathogens. It can also be an overgrowth of opportunistic species that normally occur in the human microbiome, like Candida albicans. Or it can be actually just an overgrowth or translocation of normal commensal human bacteria, simply because we've got dysmotility and some maldigestion because of hypothyroid function, right? It's a great example of the interconnectedness. And in fact, one of the reasons that people can get better, but they don't stay better, they address a lot of root causes, and they feel better for a time, but it may only be 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, right? Maybe even a year. But the revolving door of disease comes back around to let us know that you went upstream, you addressed several stages in this chain of interconnected disease dynamics, but you didn't finish it out. You didn't go upstream enough. And this is where lifestyle change is at the top of the chain, right? Crap food, toxins, and stress. But when we're looking at the disease dynamics that are upstream, just below those lifestyle choices, that can most often cause this revolving door of disease to come back around, where people got better for a time, but they didn't stay better. Hypothyroid function is one of the most common ones, right? Where we have to address the specific reasons why a given person has hypothyroid function. And many of you likely know one size doesn't fit all, right? Sometimes people have hypothyroid function because they have an autoimmune dynamic, right? They have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and they have a suppressed and dysregulated immune system that is allowing some ongoing chronic simmering infectious dynamics. It might be a bacterial overgrowth, it might be a high viral load, but that chronic simmering infectious dynamic is causing dysregulation in the immune system, where because of molecular mimicry, the immune system starts to develop antibodies against inherent tissue or enzymes, because molecularly it looks a little too much like a known foreign invader. And we get this cross reactivity between microbial debris, right? Microbial body parts is a good way to describe that to your clients. But it's things like lipopolysaccharides, right? Portions of the various membranes that make up our commensal bacteria. But this molecular mimicry spills over and starts to cause an autoimmune reaction. And it's not because the immune system is weak or dumb or not capable of supporting them. It's a dysregulation that can be reversed. But autoimmune thyroidism is only one category, right? People can struggle with overt hypothyroidism because they're not bringing on board enough nutrients to provide enough tyrosine or iodine for the thyroid gland to make optimal levels of T4 thyroid hormone. And that's especially the case if you have the maldigestion that I was talking about earlier, right? It's a good reminder that nutrition is not as simple as you are what you eat. It's not enough to eat it. That just gets it into the stomach, right? We are not what we eat. We are what we eat, digest, absorb, convert to final forms, and get past the cell membrane, which is a much higher hurdle for getting nutrition actually into the intracellular space that it's needed to synthesize various substances that the body needs. But people can actually have no thyroid issues at all with the actual gland, right? Their brain works fine to tell the thyroid what to do. The thyroid's making plenty of T4. I actually think the most common pattern of hypothyroid function we have today is increasingly poor conversion of T4 to T3 thyroid hormone, because the thyroid gland itself only does a tiny amount of that conversion, depending on the person, between about 2 and 5%. The lion's share of conversion of T4 to T3 thyroid hormone, because T3 is where it's at. T3 is what is actually causing the preponderance of intracellular thyroid effects in receptors. That conversion is not a matter of the thyroid itself. It happens in the gut. It happens in the liver. It happens in the kidneys and other peripheral tissues. And that conversion is impaired by different types of inflammation. So this is where inflammation that begins in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. It comes out and affects the conversion of T4 to T3 thyroid hormone. And people start to feel sluggish. And we like to say, yes, sluggish thyroid, sluggish anything, maybe sluggish everything. It's not just a matter of sluggish GI motility or constipation, right? Or sluggish metabolism with stubborn weight gain, especially stubborn body fat. It's sluggish anything, sluggish immune system, sluggish liver, sluggish gallbladder, sluggish brain. And so this is why optimal thyroid function is upstream and a key component to consider in a number, I believe increasingly the majority of disease chains of interconnectedness. And so learning these types of things so that you can very capably and confidently teach your clients about them, your patients about them, I think is essential. And at SCFM, we believe that education, inspiration, and empowerment are actually the most important services that any practitioner can offer to a person who is struggling with chronic lifestyle-mediated disease. Because sure, we can have lots of tools and resources and protocols. I mean, all sorts of different tools with which to help people to address what is at play right now. But as I said before, people are only going to change their day-over-day choices in order to actually get palpable improvement, palpable reversal of those disease dynamics, and most importantly, sustainable lifestyle choices. They're only going to do that if they know, if we can teach them in language they understand what is actually at play in their body, not just tell them what to do, which is not part of an authentic coaching model regardless, but to educate them, inspire them, and empower them in areas that they want to learn about, right? Areas that they want to work on. And the more they learn, the more discerning and the more honed their choice of areas of focus in their health journey become. And in this way, our ability to educate, inspire, and empower them actually fuels the journey. It fuels their ability to make good, logical, and effective and high impact choices around where they want to focus next in reversing their disease dynamics and then preventing recurrence. And so I think in the interest of time, I'll stop there. Tricia, I could keep going on and on, as you know, but I'd love to see if there are any questions so far or anything that you might want to share.
Yeah, sure. The Zoom to Facebook was unsuccessful, so
Okay.
not able to collect questions from there, but I'd like to reflect back a little bit on some key takeaways that I know I've heard for sure. And when I'm talking with coaches about different things, and just knowing what they're struggling with, I want to make sure that they've taken away. And one of them is, SAFM is known for being, very rich and deep and, beyond the basics education. And, if you're ready to get into sort of the nitty gritty physiological details, like you will 100% get that from SAFM. But at the same time, you remind everyone all the time to get back to basics. And, what are you going to maximize? What are you going to minimize? And what are you going to prioritize? And it doesn't have to be so hard for them. And it doesn't have to be so hard for you, the coach or the practitioner either. And that we have a tendency to overcomplicate it, whether we're on the coaching side or the client side, and just make everything far more complicated than it needs to be. And, working on a gratitude journal or some breathing exercises is excellent. And that's
and powerful.
Right.
I think the simplicity of some of these things sometimes leads people to believe, they're so simple, they're so basic, they can't possibly be that powerful. I think that's one of our biggest mistakes. Like mindful breathing is like one of the best ways to shift your stress hormones quickly. So absolutely agree 100%. It's a common misconception in the aggregate world of functional medicine.
Yeah. And just the idea that, as a coach, it's not your responsibility to fix people. Because a lot of coaches say, oh, this is so hard. I feel terrible if they don't get better, and doing it quickly. But really reflecting back that our role is to, as you said, educate them, inspire them, empower them, because it's their life. And, a good practitioner will work themselves out of a job because, 6 months or a year later, like they're rocking and rolling, know how to read their labels, and their taste buds are better, and all of the things, and they're going to continue to work on it with their chosen community, but that it's not your job to fix them, and they're not broken.
Exactly. You literally took the words out of my mouth. They're not broken, right? And sometimes, just to add on to what you're saying, sometimes the biggest blessing we can give someone is finally being the first person that they partner with that's not rushing them. Is their journey, right? We may be the very first person that's finally giving them the space and the time to do it in their way, to make the step-by-step progress that they need. And they want to make 3-inch steps, and other people have given up on them, or they've had to walk away because they felt too stressed. Like, no, the only acceptable step is a foot long. Like, according to who, right?
Right.
It's their journey. And I think this is one of the greatest gifts we can give people, is getting our own egos out of it. Because to your point, it's not about us.
Yeah. And I've also, a lot of the feedback I've seen, especially in this one particular doctor's office that I work with, the main feedback they tend to get is, thank you for listening to me. And just providing some space for them to explain what they're experiencing, and what they think is going well or not well, and just providing that space for them. And then they tend to come up with a lot of their own answers, or they inspire themselves. And it's just, they needed someone to listen, and someone who's, not necessarily too close to it. So someone outside of the family, or someone who doesn't know everybody else in their friend circle, and just give them that space. Whether you're a health coach or even a doctor. I mean, doctors are like, I got 15 minutes and I gotta, see the next person. There's really not a lot of time for listening. And that's been a huge piece of feedback that I know that this particular office is getting, and why it's difficult to get an appointment there, because everybody wants to be heard.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's an adage that I talk about a lot, is people are not willing to change their story until someone they respect and trust is willing to hear it.
Yeah.
But sometimes when people just feel heard and they feel validated, no judgment, no commentary, no need to fix it, and just let it sit there, then people can potentially hear themselves. Like, okay, got it. I've said it. It's out there. It's my truth. Now we can move on.
Yeah.
But if we're poo-pooing, hush-hushing, rushing, those kinds of things, and to your point, it's why I'm so excited about the diversity of working models that can be so effective through the functional medicine lens, right? Health coaches can absolutely use this knowledge to really empower their own practice, but also in working in a multimodality team, right? Certainly there are physicians who have various clinical models that allow them to do that work, especially if they really love that more intense engagement and the coaching aspect of it. But they can also hire a health coach into their practice to do a lot of that work, or they can have health coaches in their referral network. I did that for years, right? I, like you, had a time where I worked in someone else's practice. And then for many years, I had a number of other practitioners who referred to me and I referred to them. And we each contributed our diverse skills to helping these unique people. And it was a blissful way to practice. It was fantastic because we could all stay in our zones and really trust the diversity of skills being brought to the table.
Yeah, and that might be another, a blessing out of the last crazy year we've had too, is the exploration of different models and different ways of going about health coaching. And, as we have this, massive general interest in health now, we can use it to advantage. Obviously, there's some, very negative parts to it, but I see this as an opportunity for people to wake up and say, you know what, I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to just be a sitting duck here. Because if I have diabetes or I'm overweight or I have heart disease or something, I'm immune compromised. I'm just going to sit here and wait for some germ to come and kill me. No, we're not doing that anymore.
Yep.
And a lot of people
Yep.
are coming in saying, I want a different approach, and the conventional model is not providing it. So what can our community and industry do to step into that and provide some leadership?
Yes. Amen. Well said. 100%. And we're seeing that already, right, with people. And I think it's the next couple of years. I think there's going to be a huge swell of increased interest in people no longer settling for just using a drug to manage a disease dynamic, right? And as you well know, I'm a scientist by heart. Better living through chemistry, absolutely. We're blessed to have so many drugs available to us. And when people are not in the place of changing their lives, or they can't, or they need to save a body part, drugs are a real blessing. But I think increasingly people are seeing, but the drug doesn't reverse the disease dynamics. I'm not actually well. I'm just managing my disease. And to your point, that does not convey resiliency at all, at all. It feels better. It gives them some increased function or quality of life, but this pandemic has been a real potent wake up call to that. And people are looking for these services. And I think as the fear and the lockdowns and everything just lessen more and more over time, we're going to see a real surge. I think it's going to be exponential in terms of people looking for the kind of support you're talking about. So we need to be ready.
Yes.
Because people know it's not the same.
Yeah. And I think we need to have a lot of hope and positivity, because it's like I guess like a birthing process. This can be a little painful and difficult, but then something beautiful can come out of it. And I think we all need to stick together and just make the birthing process a productive and joyful one, because on the other side, there's going to be, a population that is reversing disease dynamics. And the sort of idea that that's not even possible is going to change. And I know that a lot of the work you do is in explaining how that's possible and inspiring practitioners that it can be done. We have tons of proof that disease is being reversed, and the stories coming out of your practitioners from your school are just fantastic and very inspiring. So
Yeah,
I
thanks.
definitely want everyone to check out School of Applied Functional Medicine. If you're ready for the next step in your education, I mean, your mind will be blown about how amazing the content is, and the community of people truly is very special. And if you get a chance as a student to go on any of the retreats, 100% get your butt there. They're very powerful and very special. What would be the best way for people to stay connected to the school or check out more about what you offer?
I think that the best way folks can go to the website schoolafm.com and check it out. I also want to say there's a whole ton of free resources there. You can subscribe to clinical tips, and you will actually get a 4 webinar series that really delves into a lot of detail and some of the disease dynamics that I talked about today. And there's hundreds of clinical tips on the site that can be searched and accessible by anyone. So I recommend using that as a resource, whether or not becoming a student resonates with people or not. I'm so happy to share the wealth of the knowledge. We're all standing on the shoulders of the scientists and the courageous pioneers who came before, and it's really my pleasure to share that the wealth of that science, for sure.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. You're always very generous with all of your time and resources, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I appreciate what you do here with this community in terms of galvanizing and uplifting health coaches, and I appreciate the opportunity to support you today. Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, I know there's some ladies who are also on the call. I'm gonna stop recording though. Maybe if you guys want to unmute yourself just for a minute, if you have a quick question, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to do that. We're gonna say goodbye to everybody else.